Well, hi, Laurie. I am so delighted that you're with us today. So, for everybody tuning in today, our guest is Laurie Jinkins, and she is with the House of Representatives in the Washington State Legislature, 27th District, and she is the Speaker of the House. And I have known Laurie on and off as our paths have crossed over LGBTQ rights for many years. So welcome, Laurie. It's really great to have you here.
It's great to be here, Louise, and thank you for not telling anybody how many years we've known.
Okay. I'll let you do that. So that was my first question, is I was really going to ask, you really had a remarkable, I think, career and background, an activist background. And everybody now thinks of you, obviously, in your legislative work. But if you could give us a little history of what has been your path to become Speaker of the House before you even started at the legislature.
Yeah, well, I mean, since you authorized me, Louise, I'll tell people that you and I have known each other for at least 25 years. And we got to know each other because my entry into the political realm was really around LGBTQ rights. And I served from here in Tacoma on the board, one of the first statewide grassroots LGBTQ organizations in Washington, a board called Hands Off Washington. And we were able to defeat a number of anti-gay initiatives that folks tried to put on the ballot. I was very active here in Tacoma, and you know, my work on LGBTQ issues, it's one of the 2 times in my life I've felt called to do something. And that was a real calling. I just felt incredibly committed, and I really learned everything that I ever needed to learn about politics through working on LGBTQ issues. And then here in Tacoma, I served on a bunch of nonprofit boards and a community college board. And so that helped really tie me to community and the needs of my community. And really, those were the 2 things that I think gave me the background to run for office. But in the end, when I ran 10 years ago this year. So I ran in 2010 and was first elected and started serving in 2011. And at that time, there were no out lesbians in the state legislature. I saw that marriage equality was coming our way. And I knew that it could happen. And I was going to be damned if there wasn't going to be an out lesbian in the legislature when that happened, because so many lesbians that I knew had worked so hard on so many issues related to the LGBTQ community that I just wanted us to be represented as a part of that. And it was very motivational for me when I ran. Every person who runs for office, I always tell them they have to have a reason that gets them up every morning, that sends them out when it's raining and freezing cold to doorbell and things like that. And my reason was because I wanted to be the first out lesbian serving in the state legislature. And so I was happy.
So did you have any issues around discrimination when you first decided to run?
You know, they were more to me based on gender, a lot of gender stereotypes. My wife and I had a son. A lot of, you know, even though I was out, a lot of people didn't know much other than that. They did know, like I would mention having a child, and then they would ask, well, who's taking care of the kid? And, you know, and things like that. They were much more based around gender. I'll just tell you one funny thing is, I was in a race in the end that was a Democrat on Democrat race. And one of the things I learned, at least back 10 years ago, was people just basically didn't think there was anything more liberal than a lesbian. And so I never had to run on progressive things, and I could kind of stake out more moderate ground on some stuff because everyone just presumed that I was more liberal than my opponent. And maybe I was. I serve with him now. I think we're very similar in our politics, but I think that was a very funny bias that I experienced.
Interesting, very interesting. So what about though, I mean, and then you really broke a barrier, being the first woman Speaker of the House and the first out lesbian Speaker of the House, first out gay person Speaker of the House. So did that change? And have you had any areas there or barriers there that felt like that you weren't going to get either, you didn't have everyone behind you, or did it feel that it was really time and it was very easy to sort of move into that position?
You know, when I ran, there were 3 other women running for speaker. And I think our caucus made a decision well before the race that they wanted a change and they wanted more representation and they wanted a woman. And there was a woman of color, 2 other white women, and me as a lesbian running. So I think that was kind of predetermined. I think the challenges really have been, Speaker Chop was speaker for 20 years.
Right.
And anytime you have someone in a role for 20 years, there's a way that they do things. And there becomes a time when people are ready for something different. They might not even know what that is. And so this isn't really a critique of Speaker Chop, because he did an amazing job for the people of the state. And for caucus, but people were really ready for something new. And I think one of the things women are particularly good at is building very inclusive tables. And I'm running. I have to run for speaker again now that we're in the majority, and so our reorganization is on Saturday. And I've been calling people, and it's been nice because that's been one of the things that people have said to me is that the table feels bigger, it feels more inclusive, it feels like there's a lot of voices, and people like that.
Well, that's great. Well, for all of us, we're very proud to have you there. I mean, now we're going to have a woman vice president, first woman of color, Black woman, first woman from South Asia. So that's phenomenal. And then in our city and in our state, we've already broken some of those barriers.
Yep.
So that's pretty remarkable and exciting. So as we move forward in this year, I mean, I can't imagine the most challenging year that you became Speaker of the House and having to lead us through so many crises. And they won't be over in 21. I mean, the pandemic is unfortunately going very strong right now. The economy is very, very difficult. So one thing we'd really want to hear today a little bit is, what do you see legislatively in 2021? What should Washington State be looking at? What kind of things would GSB members want to maybe get behind? What is the forecast that you see legislatively coming this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Louise, there's 3 primary things that we're going to work on, and there are 2 of them in particular. Well, I guess one of them is related to both. That is Washington State budget. We're in a huge budget deficit because COVID has really set us into the biggest economic downturn that we've had in this state or in this nation since the Great Depression. But the other 2 things that are both related to that have to do with COVID response and police accountability. So let me just talk about COVID response for a minute. To say that when I say that, some people think that's just about healthcare and health and protective equipment and things like that. But what we've really seen is COVID has highlighted for us that we live in an ecosystem in which health connects to schools, connects to childcare, and connects to business success in a very circular way. And if we aren't comprehensive in our approach, for example, we could open up the economy completely right now and no one would go to our businesses because they don't feel safe and healthy. Our workers wouldn't be able to work because they don't have daycare slots for their kids, and school is not in session, right? So that means that we've got to be looking at all of those things, because we have to improve everywhere if we're going to be able to really reopen and start to go back to some level of business as usual. And I mean that in a good way. So I think that's going to be a big piece of work. And for me, I work in public health in my other career. Like, I now have started classifying climate change work as COVID response, in part because we see in terms of health, folks who live in areas where their air is less clean have a much more difficult time recovering from COVID. And so, I mean, climate change is an area unto itself too, but again, it's another connection, another ecosystem connection. So I think that that's something that you'll see. And then we've had an incredibly robust leadership team in the House Democratic Caucus, made up primarily of our Black members caucus and our members of color caucus, that's leading the way on our police accountability work. And I'm really proud of the convenings that they've done and the proposals that they're bringing forward. And I think we've got a shot at really doing some transformation on that side too.
Well, I think for those of us who, especially live in a city like Seattle, is that we would really love to see the state take a leadership role, I think, on really addressing systemic changes in criminal justice in general, as opposed to a patchwork.
Yep.
And so we're excited. I believe that we're going to be having Senator Peterson on next week to actually talk about some of the proposals I think that he is going to be putting forth on some very important changes. Now, what about taxation? This is an area nobody, especially this year, I'm sure people right now is like, don't mention that, the economy is falling. But everybody in the whole country knows that Washington State has such a regressive tax system. Do we see any hope that we can actually address that?
Well, I mean, I think the answer is yes, and it's for a few reasons. One is that if we don't do that, if we don't do something around taxation and progressive taxation this year, then we are going to be left in a situation where we cut budgets and harm the most vulnerable people in our communities. And no one wants that to happen. No member wants that to happen. And I don't think the people of the state want that to happen. So that's the reason. That's the kind of the policy reason why we would do it. The other thing is just exactly what you said. We have the most regressive tax structure in the United States. And for folks who don't know what that means, it means we have the most tax unfair system. The poorest 20% of our population spends nearly 18 cents of every dollar they earn on taxes. The wealthiest 5% of our population spends less than 3 cents of every dollar they earn on taxes. That's the definition of unfair. That's how you would define it to your kid. That's unfair. And so we are really committed, we House Democrats are, and we've been really lucky to have Noelle Frame in the lead for us. She's leading on our tax structure work group, and they're doing incredibly good work. It's bipartisan, bicameral. I'm not going to argue that the Republicans are going to vote for, a progressive tax that we propose. The capital gains tax has been something the House has been really interested in for a long time. We're waiting to see whether or not the way the Senate's comprised, whether they'll be as interested as we are. I'm the person who prime sponsored it for 7 years, so I kind of have an interest in it. So that's what, and I use that as an example, Louise, not to say that that's the only one we would consider, but it's just an example of something that's much more progressive than what we've got now. And that's what we need to do. It's going to take a very long time to transform Washington's tax structure, but this is a very opportune time to start it.
Good. I think so too. I think what time is it when we've never seen such unfairness, and that we don't have a revenue stream that we can rely on. And so I think that would be, but it has been interesting to me, originally coming from New York, although I've been here for over 40 years, but, and coming from where there was a state income tax and a city income tax, how very against even the discussion of tax restructuring in Washington is. So I'm with you. I hope that's really going to change this year. So anything else that, as you look forward, any other civil rights issues you think? We mentioned criminal justice reform, which I think is going to be certainly very important. Taxation is certainly about equality issues as well. Anything else you think that we should be looking for as we finish this year and we start in December is when you first open up, I think the session starts?
Actually, by Constitution, it's the second Monday in January.
Okay.
We'll start. And I think because GSBA is such a strong and great business organization for the community. And when I say that, it's for both the queer community in Seattle, the Seattle community. You all play in a lot of fields, which is, I think, wonderful. But a lot of your members are small business owners. And back to the progressive taxation issue, I think one of the things that we're, as Democrats, really concerned about is the unfairness of our B&O tax. And we're really trying in our tax work group to really find a different alternative that's actually more fair to small and startup businesses. Our B&O tax on gross income is just not fair, right? Because you can have businesses that are actually not making any net income that still have to pay B&O tax. Just doesn't, that doesn't work. So just, I want folks to know that. And the other thing that I didn't mention before is we have made a commitment along with the Senate Democrats, and we're working really well collaboratively together on this to bring an equity lens to all of the policy decisions and the budget decisions that we make this year. So all of our members will actually be getting trained on use of a lens. And anytime you start doing these kinds of approaches where you're really bringing equity in a big way, it's never perfect at the first try. So we are gonna try it. We're gonna hold our feet to the fire and make sure that we're looking at equity, and that then we take what we learned this session and we improve the ability to do it for next session until we get it really moving super smoothly. But so we're very excited about that. And I'm really excited that we have a bicameral commitment, and even the governor's office has also talked about that. So we're hoping that we'll be able to use really similar tools in all places so that we can look at equity issues similarly.
Well, thank you, Laurie. I mean, I have to say, being now almost from Washington, even though unless you've been born here, people don't really accept you as a native, saying that it is an amazing state and that we have stood up to 4 years of horrendous policies from the federal government. And it has been, we all have, I think, a sense of pride that we are safer in Washington, whether it's providing health care or our unemployment, our incredible civil rights laws, having a governor with good values and a legislature. So, but having you in a leadership role, I have to say, is personally something that makes me smile. I think we're all incredibly proud of you in GSBA. And we look forward to working with you and the legislature this year, because I think it's going to be a tough year, especially for small businesses. Yeah. It's going to be a hard year. And I'm hoping the state, our Department of Commerce and all the different areas recognizes that we really need to try to keep those small businesses open. So we look forward to partnering with you in this coming year.
Thank you, Louise. I agree with everything that you said. And I do know I've been back in the state of Wisconsin. My dad passed away unexpectedly in September. And so I've been back with my mom quite a few times. And, the state of Washington has been an incredible shining light to other states in terms of leadership. And we will continue to do that and to struggle to move people forward, but to help this nation move forward. My ask of everyone as we see President-elect Biden take office is to understand that we are now headed in the right direction, but it's going to be slow and take a long time to turn around all the damage that's been done. So to be patient and to help push in the right direction, and to help both me and the vice president as we move forward. And finally, Louise, I just want to say to you, it's okay with me if something happens and you never get to retire. I'd be happy to have you stay right where you're at forever. You have done such incredible work for the community in so many ways, on so many levels, and so has GSBA. But I can't not wish you good luck as you move into retirement. But again, it would be okay with me if it just somehow didn't work out and you had to stay forever.
Yeah, I'm not sure Mary will agree with you. I think she's kind of waiting. But I'm certainly going to be busy. I'm still going to come down to Olympia. I always have things to say, and we'll love meeting with you and our amazing caucus. Just thank you again for all that you do for the state of Washington, for the LGBTQ community, for everybody, for everybody. You really are a leader for all of us. And let's make this year a better year. It's going to be a tough one, but I'm hopeful because I think we saw this last week that hope has returned. So look forward to working with you this year,
Yep.
Laurie. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.